Seisan kata is one of the most important kata, I think, for us to cross the style divide and to be able to communicate with one another and to compare notes on something that has the same name but might not be executed the same way. After many months and lots of requests, I will do Seisan. Please, my Seisan, my feeling is my Seisan not very good and I need lots of practice. So bear with me if there are things that are very different from what you might do or what might be considered the norm in, let's say, OGKK or Chundokan. My kata may vary quite a bit or a little bit here or there, or might even be a lot. Take it whence it comes from, somebody who is still needing to practice and to train the kata a lot. Seisan, 13 hands, and for me this is probably one of the most important kata that can be practiced and can be studied by most schools of Okinawan martial art and maybe even Japanese martial art or karate systems. And the reason I say this is that there are many variations of the kata for nearly every single school. And so a good point of departure, if you want to get together on the mat with somebody who does Shotokan, is to run through Seisan and compare to their kata Hangetsu. Maybe if you're working with somebody from Goju Ryu, then there's Seisan, which is very much sounding like Seisan. So this kata is probably one of the kata that is kind of a very nice linking kata. It links into many different styles. Although none of the katas are actually remotely identical in some places. Some places they're all radically different. This is essentially the, if I can call it, generic Goju Ryu type variation of Seisan kata. Okay. So, yoi or yoi, depending on your school, as always, do what your sensei says. So, right leg forward, double chest block, and Chidan, Zuki, and back to double chest block. Move forward. This is repeated 3 times. Then there is a hand strike. So from the third punch, some schools will place a lot of emphasis on the hand coming up and down. So the emphasis is on this hand. Some schools place more emphasis on this hand pulling. So the idea of pulling and striking. Some schools more forward and backwards at a Jodan level. So the idea reaching behind the neck maybe, striking into the face, where this may be reaching in and striking down to a collarbone. Okay, striking. Then we move to the next movements. So some schools, nukite. Some schools, scratch or scratch. So as a young person, I remember it being rub down the back of your hand. Up, down. And then we were with JKF Goju Kai at some point and saw nukite and then variations of that. So this, all different variations. Okay, sometimes 1, 2, 3. Sometimes 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay? So finish. Then scooping and moving. When you finish doing this and you bring the hands in, both hands working same time, lifting up, tightening. Some schools tend to focus on the knee coming up. So the idea would be kind of trapping, maybe floating your opponent by pressing under the arms, under the elbows, kneeing into the groin, then shifting forward and pushing. Some schools tend to focus a little bit more on pulling and like geri, moving backwards. So range of motion, some schools, quite a big movement. So quite a big upward movement and quite a big downward movement simultaneously. General feeling is that often it's elliptical and not straight. So it's not this, but tends to be a little bit more inside and then outside. And that is in favor of the idea of escaping and evading, pressing up and pushing out with the arms, using the elbows kind of to dig. So the elbows to kind of dig. Some schools, the focus might be like your finger is a screwdriver and you're turning a screw so that it's staying in one place, but the hand is moving in and out. So the elbow comes in, elbow goes out. Sometimes I say it's the index finger, sometimes I say it's the middle finger. We get through the first couple of movements, we repeat, punch, move, punch and move, punch. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, and 3. You get to the third movement when you've stopped, your right leg is still in front, hands have settled down to this position. Making fists, drawing the hands back in, kansetsugeri. Now, some schools favor a kansetsugeri that goes to the side a little bit because their viewpoint is that the person, maybe the evasion, the pressing, and you're kicking through their leg, their front leg, and you're trying to break the knee on the inside. So kicking on the outside to break on the inside. Some schools, more forward. Okay, so depending on what school you're in, you will have something that does this, drops, turns, and then you're going to do the following. I'm going to turn around so you can see what happens. So we finished the third one. 1, drop, turn, block, and strike. Now, I have seen people do strike, block, strike. Mainly in tournament though. Most of the time, it's reaching out, blocking, and striking. So you'd be blocking with your right hand coming down across the body, striking with the left hand. Thereafter, step and block. So similar to this kata, cipher, round movements, this hand coming across probably your body as you move, covering and going across the width of your body, and this hand kind of scooping up and covering maybe one half of your body. This is one idea. Blocking right across your body, right across your body. Anything in between that, where you will see 1, 2, 3. You may find the school focuses on turning the hand around and kind of like gouging. It's the only way to explain it. It's like you're taking your hand, you're turning it over and sticking your fingers in the person's eyes, pulling your hand down. 1. Okay, so that's one idea. You may find that the school focuses on turning the hand to the side and then applying pressure through this part of the hand down. So down, but the whole time the elbow is in. So you're getting this idea here. You may find that the idea is to grab the arm by reaching out and pulling in. So there's a couple of ideas there. Number 1, turning and leading with the thumb and pulling downward, kind of gouging, and the emphasis would then shift to the fingertips as it does the gouging action. The next idea would be, let me do it from the side, bringing the hand across, so in this position, bringing my hand across to the side and applying pressure downward through the pinky and the small finger and down this side of the hand. 1, and pressing down and holding. the next idea would be keeping the elbow in and from there reaching out and pulling along the arm. So this is going to be repeated a couple of times. So we turn, we kick, we turn, we block and strike. Step forward, first time, second time, third time. Fourth time, we stop in this position. Now, some of you may have noticed that my bottom hand may be turned this way, and it may turn out this way. Now, that is, again, also depending on the application being applied, blocking this way, or tightening and pulling, and also how far it is from your leg. So, 1, 2, straight down, or kind of a little bit forward. Okay, so you have to go and speak to your sensei and figure out. When you get to the fourth one, left leg will be in front, left hand is palm up, right hand palm down. You're now going to execute a 90-degree turn. So for some schools, it's just literally simply turn 90 degrees and slide, step and slide. Okay, so if I was this way and I was moving towards the camera, I'd literally just turn, step and slide. Some schools lift the foot and then shift by raising and then lowering the leg. The hand movements, well, some schools will be just grab, chamber, block, in, punch. So grab, chamber, block, in, punch. Some schools focus on a hand that has got a single knuckle pressing forward, and they will focus on closing and pressing forward. Other schools may focus on pulling back. Some schools will focus on closing the hand and either pressing forward like a punch or pulling back. Again, it's quite simple. In some schools, they are focused on grabbing the neck, pressing the person off balance while you're holding the arm and leveraging. Other schools, you're pulling everything out. So therefore, it comes back before executing double punch. This hand, I remember my time with Sensei Chinen, and it was like quite an elaborate movement, and it required the entire body to imagine there was an arm here, you were going over the arm, reaching in, grabbing the underside of the jacket or kimono, making a fist, and then pulling it back and into the chamber. So it was quite an elaborate hand movement. And then there were multiple circles, and then the hand pressing forward and then tightening. My upbringing was something along the lines of, okay, and at some point may have included that big leg up and shift movement. Obviously, I've had a couple of variations of the Shoen, and some variations have been exposed to a fair amount of hyperbole so that it would look better for competition. Main reason I learned this kata originally was for competition. I was a youngster, and it was one of my tournament kata. Today, it's a lifelong study kata. Tighten. Okay, good chamber, and very basic, simple phoenix peak or ippon ken or keiko ken at the top. When you finished, to chudan zuki. And then can be a big movement or a big movement. I've seen people press the elbow. I've seen schools literally dig with the elbow. And then I've seen schools just simply press the elbow out very basically. Some schools, it is just a subtle movement. but at the end of the double punch, there will be some kind of tightening and some kind of subtle digging with the arm. In some schools, the arm will literally be turned and bent at a 90-degree angle. If I was going to the back, I would then turn to my right-hand side, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, kansetsugeri, down, turn, and again, palm, block, and strike. On this movement, there are stop, step, stop block, 45 degrees. There's stop on the top hand, but the bottom hand goes back and facilitates the movement to shift forward. So the idea of to help you move forward. But 90% of the time, when you finish with left leg 45 degrees in front. So I've gone this way, 1, 2, kansetsugeri, turn, 1, 45 degrees, bearing in mind this is going to the back, my left leg is in front. Some schools might stop as if they are fighting in line. Some schools will stop as if they're fighting in line. And the reason I say in line is the next triple punch. In some schools, you see 3 punches perpendicular to the stance. And in some schools, you will see 3 punches as if the kata was going this way. The timing of the punches, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Do what your sensei says. Any variation on the timing is up to the school. And again, press with that arm, and kansetsugeri, turn to the back, and then the uppercut. 45 degrees, you're on the front-back line. You're the back at the moment, and that being the front. I would be blocking, triple punch, focus, kansetsugeri, turn, and uppercut. When people turn, you will see emphasis on turn, step down. In some schools, back foot, that way, front foot, that way, kind of like kokotsudachi. Sometimes they leave that other foot pointing 45 that way. So they would have landed in shikodachi, feet 45, and then they turn this foot to face the back, and sometimes called Seisan dachi. The leg and the arm working together, as if you are executing a block with the leg. So you've done your triple punch, your focus, your kansetsugeri, turn, and then land, uppercut, or again, impi, block, punch, short punch, but with palm down this way. Okay? In Seisan dachi, and in other schools, it is done in shikodachi. Some schools might chamber, in some schools straight off the leg, so that you get the idea of bump, up, down, up. And maybe the focus is on the backhand, which is not spoken about, but that you are pulling the person to meet your fist. Okay? You're not hitting up, but actually pulling your opponent onto your fist. Hurricane, impi, or block with the elbow down. Block, block, block. So if I'm doing shikodachi, uppercut, hurricane, impi, first one, block this way. Second one on a 45-degree plane, block this way. third one on a 90-degree plane, block this way. And then short punch. You execute short punch, kick, turn. This kansetsugeri I have seen done as a yokogeri for tournament. So from time to time I've seen people 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, yokogeri, and then turn. So in facing the front, some schools, sanchendachi, hikyuke, sometimes 1, 2, 3. So 1, 2, 3. Sometimes straight away, like tensho to here. So one that way or that way. Some schools tend to focus on this pulling motion. On the next kick, some schools do maigeri. I remember my sensei explaining to me as a youngster that we were going to do a jodan mayo kikato geri. Face level, front kick turning into a heel pressing kick and pulling back. So the kick, I don't think I could do it anymore, would be 1, 2, and then into either Hanzen Kutsudachi, Zen Kutsudachi, or cat stance. 3 options. And I'm sure there are some schools out there that probably do it in Sanchendachi too. But after the kick that you're landing, we're going to ignore my legs for now, and you're executing a punch, probably middle level, 90% of the time, other hand on the top. So a lot of schools teach the idea of touch and like you're smearing cream up your arm. Okay, that's one idea. It's like spreading cream and stopping. And the other idea is that the hand is coming, it's sliding and it is bending, and it's a subtlety, and that the arm, that is the front arm, is kind of pulling down so that you tighten your lat and you tighten your position. And I think the general feeling is that in all cases they're thinking about the simultaneous blocking and hitting kind of motion. You will see 1, 2, 3. And finishing off with moashuke. So from here, some schools very much the very big moashuke and out. Some schools a little bit more smaller moashuke. Some schools the extremely large moashuke. And then again, the hand positioning. Some schools index finger or middle finger over the middle line of the front leg, so the hand is basically above the kneecap and above the shoulder, or the hand is on the inside of the leg and the shoulder, and then in some cases the hands are on the center line. And then finish, however the school's signature at the end of the kata would look. Possibilities that at the punch you will have the idea of land. Some schools very high up. Hanzen Kutsudachi. If you've never heard of Hanzen Kutsudachi, it is essentially a half a Zen Kutsudachi. Knee over toe, and it's a little bit bigger than a Sanchendachi, but with the forward kind of mentality of a Zen Kutsudachi. So front leg bent, back leg straight. Zen Kutsudachi, slightly longer. Obviously, you'll see some of the tournament competitors with like a very long stance because it's neat. And then with the idea of cat stance. And I remember being in the Jundokan dojo and seeing both the kind of Zen Kutsudachi, regular Zen Kutsudachi, and cat stance. And we asked, and we got told that both variants had been practiced in the dojo over time, and depending on who your teacher was over the years, maybe you did one or the other. Obviously, I grew up in a dojo where the framework was long stance, so we did long stance most of the time. And I remember at one point it was tweaked to Hanzen Kutsudachi. And I know at another point, for the sake of competition, it was tweaked to a slightly longer Zen Kutsudachi. And then the drop into cat stance becoming a little bit more dramatic as such as you move from one stance to the next. Seisan. Okay, hopefully that was okay and good enough. Lots of polish. Kiai points, triple punch, and uppercut if you wish, or uppercut and the last movement. The kata, there are many variations of it, and there are physical variations in the kata which would be different between Goju schools and maybe other Okinawan schools. So if you happen to look at Ryu's Seisan, it looks different to ours. It starts kind of similar, but at that point where we turn and we do this block and catch type of technique and then turn and do this to the hikuki and triple punch, they tend to have a lot of kicking and punching and turning and kicking where they use the front leg. Very similar to Hangetsu. So Shotokan, Shorin Ryu, you would see something similar to the Hangetsu kata, the half moon kata. And then obviously Yuichi Ryu have got a totally different kata. I think the expert would be McCarthy sensei. He's probably done more varieties, and I know that he often teaches something called the Aragaki Seisan, which is again a different variation once more. So many variations depending on school based on the name Seisan, 13 hands, Seisan-tei. And then within the Goju framework, there are lots of variations, and obviously sport has created a lot of varieties based on trying to create longer stances and lower down for more dramatic effect, and then often people losing touch with how the kata ought to be done. And then katas that are very, very large and expansive with very big movements versus some of the schools with a lot smaller movements. As always, please remember, do what your sensei says. Please keep working, please train and enjoy your kata and your karate. Seisan kata is one of the most important kata, I think, for us to cross the style divide and to be able to communicate with one another and to compare notes on something that has the same name but might not be executed the same way. So I hope this video is useful, and I hope that you will like, subscribe and leave some comments. And big thank you and big shout out to the people who have, I think Zoe has called it a super thank you or a super like. We've had a couple of people who've dropped us some super likes, which essentially are really, really nice donations. I was blown away by some of the donations that we have received. I'm truly humbled. Thank you very much. Arigato gozaimasu. Thank you very much. Sayonara. Have a good evening wherever you are in the world.